She was the only child without gifts, until a human mechanic dressed in red appeared. Before we dive into this story, drop a quick hi in the comments and tell me where you are watching from. It really helps support the channel. On the frost-covered mining colony of Viridian 7, where the twin moons cast silver light across crystalline valleys and the air shimmered with particles of suspended ice, young Zara stood alone at the edge of the celebration square, watching the other children display their gifts with pride and wonder. The colony itself was a marvel of engineering, a network of transparent domes and underground tunnels that housed 15,000 souls who had made their home on this frozen world. The mining operations extracted rare minerals from deep beneath the ice, materials essential for quantum computer manufacturing across 3 sectors. But despite all this technological achievement, despite the colony's importance to galactic commerce, what truly defined the people of Viridian 7 were the gifts. Supernatural abilities that manifested in nearly every child born there. Powers that scientists attributed to something in the planet's unique quantum field interactions with human neurology. While the other children manipulated gravity with casual gestures, spoke to machines with their minds as naturally as breathing, or phased through solid matter as if it were mere illusion, Zara remained stubbornly, painfully, completely ordinary. She was the only child in 3 generations born without a single extraordinary ability, and everyone knew it. The annual gift festival had arrived once again, transforming the colony into a wonderland of light and celebration. The entire settlement gathered in the central plaza, a massive enclosed space where glowing decorations hung from every surface, casting rainbow colors across the crowds below. The decorations themselves were works of art created by gifted artisans, sculptures that floated in midair without support, holographic displays that responded to thoughts, and crystalline formations that sang haunting melodies when touched by specific frequencies. Music filled the cold air, performed by musicians whose gifts allowed them to play multiple instruments simultaneously or create sounds that touched the soul in ways purely acoustic performances never could. The atmosphere should have been joyous, magical, a celebration of everything that made their colony special. For Zara, it was torture. Every display of power, every casual demonstration of supernatural ability reminded her of what she lacked. Zara stood apart from the main festivities, her parents nearby but uncertain how to comfort her. Her mother, Liana, was a senior fusion engineer whose gift of perfect spatial reasoning made her invaluable in designing the colony's power systems. Her father, Marcus, supervised the mining operations with the help of his ability to sense structural weaknesses in materials from dozens of meters away. They were both accomplished, respected, essential to the colony's functioning. And they had produced a daughter who was, by all measurements, defective. Liana knelt beside Zara now, brushing a strand of dark hair from her face with a gesture that was tender but couldn't quite hide the worry in her eyes. "Your gift might just be late in coming, sweetheart," she said softly, her voice barely audible over the celebration around them. "It happens sometimes. Very rarely, but it does happen. Children whose abilities manifest later than normal." But Zara knew better than to hope for miracles. She had turned 12 cycles old, 2 full years past the age when gifts typically manifested. The medical scans had been thorough and repeated, conducted by the colony's best physicians and genetic specialists. They showed nothing unusual, no latent abilities waiting to emerge like a flower before bloom, no genetic markers for any known talents hiding in her DNA. The results were definitive and devastating. She was, by every scientific measurement and medical assessment available, completely ordinary in a society where ordinary had become synonymous with broken. There was no malfunction in her genes, no biological reason for her lack of abilities. She simply did not have them, had never had them, and according to every expert consulted, would never develop them. She was an anomaly, a throwback to an earlier stage of human evolution, a reminder of what people had been before Viridian 7's unique environment had changed them into something more. Around her in the festival square, children her age demonstrated their abilities with the casual ease of breathing. It was as natural to them as walking, an integral part of who they were, and they wielded their powers without thought or effort. Taryn, who lived 3 domes over and had once been her friend before the gap in their abilities made friendship awkward, levitated 3 meters off the ground. He spun slowly in the air, laughing with pure joy, his arms spread wide, as if embracing the sky itself. His gift of gravity manipulation was strong for his age, and he could already lift objects 10 times his own mass. The colony administrators had already marked him for advanced training in starship operations. Mika, whose family ran the colony's largest agricultural facility, touched a malfunctioning light panel with one delicate finger. The panel immediately repaired itself, responding to her technopathic command as eagerly as a puppy responding to its owner. She could speak to machines in a language beyond words, convincing them to function properly through sheer force of will and natural affinity. The colony's automated systems ran smoother because of technopaths like her, rarely breaking down and quickly repaired when they did. Even little Jorin, barely 7 cycles old and still missing his front teeth, could predict the exact moment the next transport would arrive at the spaceport, down to the precise second. His precognitive gift was already sharp and reliable, a talent that would make him invaluable in logistics and planning as he grew older. The Transport Guild had already approached his parents about sponsoring his education. Everywhere Zara looked, she saw casual miracles. Children younger than her displayed powers she would never possess, abilities that came to them as naturally as her own heartbeat came to her. Except her heartbeat was the only thing about her that was ordinary. She watched them play games that involved manipulating gravity fields, racing while phasing through obstacles, or competing to see who could interface with complex machines the fastest. These were normal childhood activities on Viridian 7, as common as tag or hide-and-seek had been on old Earth. But Zara could not participate. She could only watch from the sidelines, always the observer, never the participant, forever separated from her peers by the gulf of her ordinariness. Zara could not bear to watch anymore. The weight of inadequacy pressed down on her like a physical force, making it hard to breathe, impossible to stay. She turned away from the festivities, her vision blurring with tears she refused to let fall in public, and walked with forced casualness toward the maintenance district. It was on the opposite side of the colony from the celebration, a journey that took her through connecting tunnels and across 2 smaller domes. The maintenance sector was where the older buildings stood, structures from the colony's early days that had been superseded by newer, more efficient construction but never demolished. They existed in permanent shadow, cast by the residential towers and commercial centers that had grown up around them. The buildings here were functional rather than beautiful, built for utility rather than aesthetics, and they suited Zara's mood perfectly. She preferred it here, far away from the pitying glances of adults who remembered when she had been a normal, happy child before the absence of her gifts had marked her as different. Away from the whispered comments of other children who did not quite understand why she could not do what came so naturally to them. Away from her parents' barely concealed disappointment, love mixed with confusion about what they had done wrong to produce a daughter so fundamentally unlike them. In the maintenance district, things were simple. Equipment either worked or it did not. Problems had solutions that could be found through logic and effort rather than supernatural intuition. Here, normal work happened without the flourish of extraordinary abilities, accomplished through knowledge, tools, and persistent effort. It was the only place in the colony where Zara felt less like a failure and more like someone who might, possibly, have some small value to contribute. She found her usual spot behind the old cargo depot, a quiet corner where discarded equipment and obsolete machinery had been stacked over the years, creating a small maze of metal and forgotten technology. It was her sanctuary, her hiding place, the one location where she could be alone with her thoughts without judgment. Zara sat on an overturned storage crate that had become her unofficial throne, pulled out her sketchpad from the bag she always carried, and began drawing the stars she could see through the transparent dome overhead. The twin moons of Viridian 7 hung in the sky like watchful eyes, their silver light mixing with the warmer glow from the distant sun. She sketched the patterns of constellations, imagining what it might be like to leave this colony, to go somewhere where gifts were not the measure of a person's worth, where she might find a place where ordinary was enough. Art was her only escape, The one activity she could do that felt special even though it required no supernatural gift at all. She had discovered early on that she had a talent for drawing, for capturing on paper the images in her mind with a precision that impressed even gifted artists who could manipulate holograms with their thoughts. It was not a gift in the sense her colony understood gifts, but it was hers, and it mattered to her even if it mattered to no one else. That was when she heard it. A strange humming sound, melodic and warm, cutting through the cold evening air like a song from a dream. It was unlike anything Zara had heard before, not the sharp mechanical whine of standard engines or the subtle quantum vibration of the colony's power systems, but something organic and inviting, almost alive in its musical quality. The sound seemed to resonate in her chest, calling to something deep inside her that she could not name. Zara looked up from her sketchpad, her pencil freezing mid-stroke, and saw something that should have been impossible. A craft unlike anything in the colony's extensive registry descended from the sky above the maintenance district, moving with deliberate grace rather than the sharp, efficient movements of standard transports. It was small relative to cargo haulers, boxy in shape, but somehow elegant despite its unusual proportions, and painted a deep crimson red that seemed to glow with its own internal light, as if the color itself was alive and pulsing with energy. The craft moved without urgency, almost leisurely, as if time itself had slowed to accommodate its passage through the evening sky. The craft landed in the clearing between two warehouses with a soft thump, sending up a small cloud of frost particles that sparkled in the moonlight. Zara's heart hammered in her chest. Nothing unscheduled ever landed on Viridian 7. The colony's strict protocols meant every arrival and departure was logged, tracked, and approved weeks in advance. This visitor was completely unauthorized. A hatch opened on the side of the red craft, and a ramp extended downward. Zara held her breath, torn between running for help and staying to satisfy her overwhelming curiosity. Curiosity won. She crept closer, using the stacked equipment as cover, until she had a clear view of the mysterious arrival. What emerged from the craft made her gasp. It was a human, or at least she thought it was. She had learned about humans in her history classes, the strange species that had appeared in the wider galaxy only a few decades ago, known for their unusual adaptability and bizarre customs. But seeing one in person was entirely different from looking at images in a datapad. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and dressed in the most peculiar outfit Zara had ever seen. A bright red coat trimmed with white fur, red pants, black boots that seemed impractically shiny, and a matching red hat with a white pom-pom on the end. His face was partially covered by a full white beard, and his eyes twinkled with an amusement that seemed completely at odds with the strangeness of his unannounced arrival. The human looked around the maintenance yard, nodded to himself as if confirming something, and then reached back into his craft. He emerged carrying a large red bag slung over one shoulder and a peculiar tool belt around his waist. The tools were unlike anything Zara had seen in the colony's workshops. They glowed with soft light, hummed with energy, and seemed to shift and change shape as she watched. Then he looked directly at her hiding spot. "Found you," he said in perfectly accented galactic common, his voice deep and warm like heated honey. His smile grew wider. "Hello, Zara. I've been looking for you." Zara's breath caught in her throat. How did he know her name? How did he even know she was there? She stood slowly, stepping out from behind the equipment with her hands raised in what she hoped was a non-threatening gesture. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "How do you know my name?" The human set down his large bag and extended a gloved hand toward her. "Name's Ethan Cole, but most folks where I come from call me something else during this time of year." He gestured at his red outfit with a chuckle. "I'm what you might call a specialized mechanic. I fix things that are broken, but not always in the way people expect." Zara took a hesitant step forward. "Are you with the Transport Guild? Did my parents hire you?" She couldn't imagine why they would, or how they could afford a private specialist from off-world, but it was the only explanation that made any sense. Ethan shook his head, the pom-pom on his hat bouncing with the motion. "No guild, no hire. I'm here on my own business, and that business tonight is you." He knelt down to her level, his expression becoming more serious, but no less kind. "I know what you're going through, Zara. I know you think you're broken because you don't have a gift like the other children. But I'm here to tell you something important. You're not broken. You're exactly what this colony needs. Tears stung Zara's eyes before she could stop them. That's what everyone says. That I'm special in my own way, that gifts aren't everything. But they don't mean it. They're just trying to make me feel better about being defective. Ethan stood and walked to his craft, pulling out a small stool which he unfolded and sat upon. Then he reached into his bag and withdrew what looked like a half-assembled quantum regulator, a critical component in the colony's life support system. He set it on his lap and pulled a strange glowing tool from his belt. Let me tell you something about humans, Zara. We're a species that got into space without any gifts at all. No telepathy, no telekinesis, no ability to interface with machines through thought alone. We had to build everything with our hands and our minds and our stubborn refusal to accept limitations. He began working on the regulator with practiced ease, his hands moving with precision as the tool hummed and sparked. Where I come from, we have a tradition. Once a year, during the coldest, darkest time, someone dresses up like I am now and brings gifts to children. Not because they earned them, not because they have special abilities, but simply because they exist and they matter. It's a reminder that value doesn't come from what you can do, but from who you are. Zara moved closer, fascinated by the way his tools worked. They seemed to respond to his intentions rather than his direct control, adapting their functions as needed. What does that have to do with me? Ethan looked up from his work, his eyes serious. Everything. You see, your colony has a problem. A big one. And nobody's noticed it yet because they're all too busy being proud of their gifts. But I noticed it the moment I scanned your settlement from orbit. Your primary fusion reactor has a cascade fault developing in its containment field. In about 36 hours, it's going to fail catastrophically unless someone fixes it. Zara's blood ran cold. A fusion reactor failure would be catastrophic. It would destroy half the colony and render the rest uninhabitable. But our engineers check the reactor every day. They would have detected any fault. We have people with technopathic gifts who can sense problems in machinery before they happen. That's exactly the problem, Ethan said, setting down the completed regulator. It was now glowing with a steady, healthy blue light that pulsed like a heartbeat. Your technopaths can sense and fix problems with standard technology, but this fault is in the quantum substrate level of the containment field. It's invisible to technopathic scanning because it exists in a state of superposition. The only way to detect it is through old-fashioned diagnostic analysis and manual calibration. The kind of work that requires no gift at all, just knowledge, patience, and careful attention to detail. He stood and walked to Zara, placing the regulator in her hands. I can fix it myself, of course. That's partly why I'm here. But I think you should help me. I think you should be the one to save your colony. Because you, Zara, have a gift that nobody here appreciates. You see the world the way it actually is, not filtered through supernatural perception. You notice details others miss. And you have the patience to work through problems step by step, without shortcuts. Zara looked down at the regulator in her hands, its warm glow reflecting off her face. Why would you help me? Why would you come all this way for someone you've never met? Ethan's smile returned, warm and genuine. Because that's what we do. Humans, I mean. We see someone who needs help, and we help them. We see someone who's been told they're not good enough, and we show them they're more than enough. Besides, he added with a wink, it's the season for it. Now, how about you take me to that reactor? We've got work to do. Zara hesitated for only a moment before nodding. She had nothing to lose, and, apparently, an entire colony to save. Lead the way, she said, her voice stronger than she felt. But first, you need to tell me more about this tradition of yours. The one with the gifts and the red suit. As they walked through the maintenance district toward the reactor facility, Ethan told her about Earth's winter celebration, about a figure called Santa Claus who brought joy to children regardless of their merit or abilities. He explained the concept of Christmas, of giving without expectation of return, of finding light in the darkest times. Zara listened with rapt attention, amazed by the strangeness and beauty of human customs. The reactor facility loomed ahead, a massive structure of reinforced steel and transparent aluminum that hummed with barely contained power. 2 guards stood at the entrance, both gifted with enhanced reflexes and danger sense. They straightened as Zara and Ethan approached, their expressions shifting from bored alertness to confusion at the sight of the strangely dressed human. "Halt," one of them said, raising a hand. "This is a restricted area. No unauthorized personnel allowed, especially during the festival. The reactor is on automatic monitoring tonight." Ethan stepped forward, pulling a small device from his belt. He pressed a button, and a holographic display materialized in the air, showing dense readouts and alarming red indicators that pulsed with increasing urgency. "I'm Ethan Cole, independent mechanic and reactor specialist. This data shows a developing cascade fault in your quantum containment substrate. You have approximately 35 hours and 42 minutes before catastrophic failure. I'm here to prevent that, and this young lady is going to assist me." The guards looked at each other, uncertainty crossing their features. One of them touched a communicator on his wrist. "We need to verify this with command. Please wait here." "We don't have time for bureaucracy," Ethan said firmly. "Every minute we wait, that fault gets worse. Look at your own monitoring systems. Check the quantum variance logs for the past 72 hours. You'll see an exponential deviation curve that your technopaths missed because they're not trained to look for substrate-level anomalies." The second guard pulled out a datapad and began accessing the reactor's records. His face went pale as he scrolled through the data. "By the ancients," he breathed. "He's right. The variance curve is right here. How did we miss this?" He looked up at Ethan with new respect mixed with fear. "How did you detect this from orbit?" "Humans have good sensors," Ethan said with a shrug. "And we're paranoid about reactor safety. It's a survival trait. Now, are you going to let us in? Or are you going to explain to your colony why you delayed the people trying to save their lives?" The guards stepped aside immediately, and the facility doors opened with a pressurized hiss. Zara followed Ethan inside, her heart pounding with a mixture of terror and exhilaration. The main reactor chamber was enormous, a cathedral of technology where the fusion core burned with the power of a contained star. Catwalks crisscrossed the space at various levels, and monitoring stations dotted the perimeter, most of them unoccupied due to the festival. Ethan pulled out a larger version of the scanning device he had shown the guards. "All right, Zara, lesson 1 in reactor maintenance. Never trust automated systems alone. Always verify with manual diagnostics." He handed her a pair of specialized goggles. "Put these on. They'll let you see the quantum substrate layer." Zara slipped on the goggles, and the world transformed. Suddenly, she could see beyond the physical machinery to the underlying quantum field that held the fusion reaction in check. And there, like a spreading web of cracks across glass, she saw the fault. It was beautiful in a terrifying way, patterns of instability that pulsed and grew with each passing second. "Oh no," she whispered. "It's worse than I thought." Ethan nodded grimly. "The fault is propagating through the containment field's quantum entanglement matrix. If it reaches the primary stabilizers, the whole thing will collapse faster than the emergency shutdown can engage. We need to introduce a counter-resonance pattern that will reinforce the stable regions while we manually recalibrate the substrate generators." Zara pulled off the goggles and looked at Ethan with wide eyes. "I don't know how to do any of that. I'm not a reactor technician. I'm just a kid with no gifts." Ethan placed a hand on her shoulder. "You're a kid with a brain, eyes, and hands. That's all we need. I'll guide you through every step. Your job is to follow my instructions precisely, double-check every calculation, and trust your observations. No gifts required, just focus and determination. Can you do that?" Zara took a deep breath and nodded. "I can do that." For the next 6 hours, Ethan taught Zara the fundamentals of quantum reactor maintenance. He showed her how to read the substrate patterns, how to calculate the correct counter-resonance frequencies, and how to manually calibrate equipment that was normally controlled through technopathic interface. It was painstaking work that required absolute precision and patience. Zara discovered that she was good at it. Very good. Her mind, unburdened by the intuitive leaps that gifts provided, worked through problems logically and methodically. She caught errors that Ethan deliberately introduced to test her attention to detail. She asked questions that showed deep understanding of the principles involved. For the first time in her life, she felt truly capable. As dawn began to break over Viridian 7, casting golden light through the reactor facility's windows, they reached the critical phase of the repair. Ethan had isolated the fault's point of origin, a microscopic imperfection in one of the substrate generators that had slowly degraded over years of operation. Now came the delicate work of replacing it while maintaining containment field integrity. "This is where it gets dangerous," Ethan said, his voice serious. "I need to shut down the backup safeties to access the generator housing. If anything goes wrong during the replacement, the containment field could collapse before the emergency systems engage. We'll have about 3 seconds to restore stability or the reaction will breach." Zara felt fear coil in her stomach, but she pushed it aside. "What do you need me to do?" Ethan pulled out a replacement generator from his equipment bag, along with a specialized installation tool. "You're going to monitor the field integrity on this display." He indicated a holographic readout floating beside them. "If the stability drops below 40%, you need to press this button." He showed her a large red control on his tool. "It will inject a dampening pulse that will buy us another 10 seconds. But we only get one shot at it, so use it only if absolutely necessary." Zara positioned herself in front of the display, her finger hovering near the emergency button. Her hands were steady despite her fear. "Ready," she said. Ethan moved with the speed and precision of someone who had done this countless times. He opened the access panel, removed the faulty generator, and began installing the replacement. The containment field immediately began to fluctuate, and the stability reading dropped from 98% to 72% in 2 seconds. Zara watched the numbers fall. Her entire focus narrowed to that single display. 65%, 58%, 51%. Her finger tightened on the button, but she held back. Ethan had said only if necessary, and he was still working with calm efficiency. 47%, 43%. "Hold," Ethan commanded, not looking up from his work. "Almost there. 40% exactly." Zara's finger pressed against the button, not quite triggering it. Every muscle in her body tensed. The numbers held steady for 1 heartbeat, then 2. Then they began to rise. 42%, 48%, 55%. The generator clicked into place with a satisfying snap, and the stability rocketed back up to 96%. Ethan closed the access panel and let out a long breath. "Perfect," he said, turning to Zara with a proud smile. "You held your nerve exactly right. Too early, and we would have wasted the dampening pulse. Too late, and, well, let's not think about that. You did brilliantly." Zara's legs suddenly felt weak, and she sat down hard on the catwalk. "We did it," she said, the words not quite feeling real. "We actually did it." "You did it," Ethan corrected. "I just provided guidance and tools. The focus, the precision, the courage to hold steady when everything was on the line, that was all you." He began packing up his equipment. "Now comes the part where you get to be a hero." "What do you mean?" Ethan gestured at the reactor chamber. "The fault is fixed, but someone needs to explain to the colony administration what happened and how it was resolved. I could do it, but I think the story will mean more coming from you. The girl without gifts who saved everyone because she had the skills that actually mattered when it counted." Zara felt panic flutter in her chest. "They won't believe me. They'll think I'm making it up or that you did everything while I just watched. Then we make sure they believe you." Ethan pulled out a small recording device. "I've been documenting everything. Every scan, every calculation, every step of the repair. And I've got something else for you." He reached into his red bag and pulled out an official-looking certificate on actual paper, something rarely seen in the colony's digital world. "This is a Level 5 Reactor Technician certification from the Human Engineering Guild. I'm authorized to issue them to individuals who demonstrate exceptional skill and knowledge. Congratulations, Zara. You've earned it." Zara took the certificate with trembling hands, staring at her name written in elegant script below the official seals and signatures. "This is real. As real as the reactor you just helped save." Ethan stood and offered his hand to help her up. "Now let's go inform your colony that they've got a new reactor specialist, gifts or no gifts." The walk back through the facility felt surreal to Zara. Ethan transmitted his findings to the colony's emergency systems, and within minutes, alarms were blaring and administrators were rushing to the reactor facility. By the time Zara and Ethan reached the main entrance, a crowd had gathered, including the colony director, the chief engineer, and Zara's parents. Director Vorn, a stern woman with the gift of perfect memory, strode forward with an expression of barely controlled fury. Who authorized this intrusion into our reactor facility? She demanded, looking at Ethan with undisguised suspicion. And how did you bypass our security protocols? Ethan gestured to the facility behind them. I detected a critical fault in your quantum containment substrate from orbit. Your security protocols became irrelevant the moment I realized your entire colony was 35 hours from annihilation. I informed your guards. I documented everything. And this young woman assisted me in preventing a catastrophic failure that your gifted technopaths completely missed. That's impossible, said Torin, the chief engineer. His gift allowed him to interface directly with technology. Our systems are monitored constantly. We would have detected any critical fault. Ethan pulled out his scanner and projected the data for everyone to see. The quantum substrate layer exists below the level your technopathic abilities can sense. You were monitoring the visible symptoms, but missed the underlying cause. By the time the fault would have become visible to your gifts, it would have been too late to stop. The chief engineer studied the data, his expression shifting from skepticism to shock to embarrassment. He pulled out his own scanner and ran verification checks. By the ancients, he breathed. It's all accurate. We were blind to it. If he hadn't intervened, we would have lost containment in less than 2 days. Director Vorn's expression softened into concern. You said this young woman assisted you? She looked at Zara as if seeing her for the first time. Zara, you helped repair the reactor? Zara's mother pushed through the crowd, her face pale with fear and confusion. Zara, what's going on? Why are you at the reactor facility? You should be at the festival. Ethan stepped beside Zara, placing a supportive hand on her shoulder. Your daughter spent the past 6 hours learning advanced reactor maintenance and performing precision repairs under emergency conditions. She showed exceptional aptitude, remarkable focus, and genuine courage. I've certified her as a Level 5 reactor technician, which is a rank that takes most people years of study to achieve. The crowd murmured in disbelief. Zara felt the weight of dozens of eyes on her, a mixture of skepticism, surprise, and in some cases, something that looked like respect. Her father moved forward, his expression unreadable. Is this true, Zara? You repaired the reactor? Zara nodded, finding her voice. Ethan taught me everything, but I did the work. I monitored the containment field during the critical replacement. I calculated the counter-resonance frequencies. I verified every calibration. She held up the certificate, and he gave me this. Her father took the certificate, reading it carefully. His eyes widened as he recognized the official seals. This is legitimate. The Human Engineering Guild is recognized across 12 sectors. This certification is worth more than most advanced degrees. Director Vorn stepped forward, her perfect memory apparently bringing up relevant information about human credentials. The guild is highly respected for their engineering standards. If they've certified her, then her abilities are genuine. She looked at Zara with new eyes. You have a gift after all, child. It's just not the kind we're used to seeing. It's not a gift, Zara said quietly, then louder with more confidence. It's not a gift. It's a skill. It's something I learned and earned through effort and attention and hard work. And that's the point. Not everything valuable comes from being born special. Sometimes the most important abilities are the ones we build ourselves. Ethan's smile was radiant with pride. Couldn't have said it better myself. He addressed the crowd. Your colony's reliance on gifted individuals created a blind spot in your infrastructure maintenance. You've got incredible abilities, but you've forgotten the value of fundamental engineering principles. Zara here represents something you need more of. People who see problems clearly, work through them methodically, and don't rely on supernatural shortcuts. The chief engineer stepped forward, looking at Zara with genuine respect. Would you be willing to review our other systems? If we have more blind spots like this one, we need to know. Zara looked up at Ethan, who nodded encouragingly. I'd be honored, she said, but I'll need proper training. What I learned tonight is just the beginning. I can arrange that, the chief engineer said immediately. We can set up an apprenticeship program. And, he added, looking somewhat ashamed, we'll implement regular manual diagnostic checks alongside our technopathic monitoring. This should never have been overlooked. The crowd began to disperse, people talking excitedly about the near disaster and the unlikely hero who had helped prevent it. Zara's parents remained, her mother wrapping her in a tight embrace. I'm so proud of you, she whispered. And I'm sorry. We should have helped you find your path instead of hoping you'd develop a gift you were never meant to have." Her father joined the embrace, his voice thick with emotion. "You saved us all, not despite your lack of gifts, but because of it. That's worth more than any supernatural ability." As her parents led her away, promising a proper celebration and rest after her long night, Zara looked back at Ethan. He was packing up his equipment, preparing to return to his strange red craft. "Wait," she called out, pulling away from her parents to run back to him. "You never told me. Why do you really do this? Travel to distant colonies, help strangers, dress up in that unusual outfit?" Ethan knelt down to her level one last time. "Because everyone deserves to know they matter, Zara. Everyone deserves to feel special, not for what they can do, but for who they are. Where I come from, we call it the spirit of Christmas. It's about giving without expecting anything in return, about finding joy in helping others succeed, about believing that every person has value worth celebrating." He tapped her certificate gently. "You're going to do great things, not because you have supernatural powers, but because you have something better. You have curiosity, determination, and the humility to learn. Never forget that those are the real gifts." "Will I see you again?" Zara asked, suddenly sad at the thought of him leaving. "Maybe," Ethan said with a mysterious smile. "I tend to show up where I'm needed, when I'm needed. But something tells me you won't need my help next time. You've got this." He stood and walked back to his craft, then paused at the ramp. "Oh, and Zara, Merry Christmas. Look it up. I think you'll like the tradition." Before she could respond, he was inside the craft. The engines hummed to life with that same warm, melodic sound, and the red vessel lifted gracefully into the pre-dawn sky. Zara watched until it disappeared among the stars, feeling like she had been visited by something magical even though everything he had taught her was grounded in science and reason. The next few weeks transformed Zara's life completely. Her certification opened doors that had seemed permanently closed. The chief engineer, true to his word, created a special apprenticeship program for her, combining traditional engineering education with hands-on experience in the colony's infrastructure systems. Other children, inspired by her story, began expressing interest in non-gifted skills. Teachers started incorporating more fundamental science and engineering into their curricula. Zara discovered that her lack of supernatural abilities gave her a unique perspective. Where gifted technicians could sense and fix problems intuitively, she had to understand the underlying principles completely. This deeper understanding allowed her to identify potential issues before they became critical, to design more robust systems, and to teach others more effectively than those who had never struggled to learn. 6 months after Ethan's visit, the colony received a package addressed to Zara. Inside was a datapad containing detailed information about Earth's Christmas tradition, images of families celebrating together, stories of generosity and kindness, and instructions for how to recreate some of the customs. There was also a note in Ethan's handwriting. "Thought you might want to start a new tradition in your colony. Sometimes the best gifts are the ones we give to others. Stay brilliant. Your friend, Ethan Cole." Zara shared the information with her parents and teachers, and together they organized Viridian 7's first Christmas celebration. It was different from their traditional gift festival, focused not on displays of supernatural abilities, but on acts of kindness, handmade presents, and time spent together. The colony decorated with lights and greenery from the hydroponics gardens. Children made gifts for each other instead of showing off their powers. Families gathered to share meals and stories. The tradition caught on with surprising enthusiasm. People discovered that there was something deeply satisfying about giving without the expectation of reciprocal display of abilities. The emphasis on handmade gifts led to an explosion of art, crafts, and creative expression from people who had previously dismissed such activities as beneath those with supernatural powers. The colony became warmer, more connected, more human in a way they hadn't realized they were missing. Zara became a symbol of this shift in perspective. She continued her training in engineering and reactor maintenance, eventually becoming the youngest chief technician in the colony's history at age 17. She implemented comprehensive manual diagnostic protocols that complemented the colony's reliance on gifted technicians, creating a more robust and reliable infrastructure system. Her methods were adopted by other colonies in the sector, and she was frequently invited to speak at engineering conferences about the importance of fundamental skills alongside supernatural abilities. But she never forgot the human mechanic dressed in red who had appeared on that cold festival night and changed her life. Every year during Christmas, she told the story to the colony's children, emphasizing the same lesson Ethan had taught her. Value isn't about the abilities you're born with, she would say. It's about the effort you put in, the knowledge you build, and the ways you help others. Gifts are wonderful, but they're not what makes you special. You're already special, every one of you, just by being who you are. On the 10th anniversary of Ethan's visit, when Zara was 22 and a respected engineer throughout the sector, she received another message. It was brief, just a few words on a simple digital card decorated with images of Earth's winter celebrations. Proud of you, Zara. Keep spreading the spirit. The universe needs more people like you. Merry Christmas. EC. Zara smiled, looking out at the colony she had helped transform. She thought about the girl she had been, standing alone at a festival for gifted children, believing she had nothing valuable to offer. She thought about the kindness of a stranger who had traveled across space to teach her otherwise. And she thought about all the children she had since helped, both gifted and ungifted, showing them that everyone has value and everyone can make a difference. That evening, at the colony's Christmas celebration, Zara stood before the gathered crowd and raised a glass. To the human mechanic in red, she said, her voice carrying across the decorated square. To the stranger who taught us that the best gifts aren't supernatural abilities but the kindness we show each other, the knowledge we share, and the effort we invest in making our world better. And to everyone here tonight, remember that you are enough, exactly as you are. Not because of what you can do, but because of who you are. The crowd raised their glasses in return, a mix of gifted and ungifted, all equal in their shared celebration. Somewhere among the stars, Zara liked to imagine, a human in a red suit smiled and moved on to his next destination, carrying with him the same message of hope and belonging that he had given her. The message that every person matters, that kindness transcends ability, and that sometimes the most extraordinary thing anyone can do is simply help someone else discover their own worth. The colony's lights glowed warm against the cold dark of space, a beacon of community and connection built not just on supernatural gifts, but on the very human values of compassion, generosity, and the belief that everyone deserves to feel special. Zara looked up at the stars and whispered a quiet thank you to the universe that had sent her exactly what she needed when she needed it most. A reminder that being ordinary in a world of extraordinary was its own kind of gift, and that the effort to learn, to grow, and to help others was the most valuable ability of all. Years continued to pass, and Zara's influence spread beyond Viridian 7. She wrote technical manuals that revolutionized how colonies approached infrastructure maintenance, combining gifted abilities with fundamental engineering practices. She established training programs that valued both supernatural talents and learned skills equally. She mentored countless young people, some with gifts and some without, teaching them that capability comes in many forms and that true expertise requires dedication regardless of natural advantages. The Christmas tradition she had introduced spread to neighboring colonies, then throughout the sector. What had started as one human's unusual custom became a widely celebrated reminder of shared values that transcended species and abilities. People across dozens of worlds now gathered once a year to focus on giving rather than receiving, on connection rather than competition, on recognizing the inherent worth of every individual. Zara never married, dedicating her life instead to her work and her mission of changing how society valued different types of contributions. But she built deep friendships and maintained close relationships with her family, creating a rich and fulfilling life. She found joy in teaching, satisfaction in solving complex problems, and purpose in helping others find their own paths. On her 30th birthday, Zara received a final gift from Ethan Cole. It was delivered by a young human pilot who explained that he was part of an organization called the Santa Claus Network, a group of human engineers and specialists who traveled the galaxy helping people in need, especially during the Earth holiday season. Ethan had apparently founded the organization, training others to carry on his mission of spreading hope and demonstrating human values of generosity and kindness. The gift was a small wooden box, carved with intricate designs that showed scenes of her colony, her achievements, and the children she had taught. Inside was a simple ornament made of crystal, shaped like a star, along with a letter. Zara read it with tears in her eyes. "Dear Zara," the letter began, "I knew from the moment I scanned your colony that you were someone special. Not because you lacked gifts, but because you had the resilience to face that lack with courage, the curiosity to seek your own path, and the heart to care about others even when you felt overlooked yourself. You've exceeded every hope I had for you. You haven't just found your own worth. You've helped thousands of others find theirs. That's the real magic, Zara. Not moving things with your mind or talking to machines, but touching hearts and changing lives through simple human decency and determination. The ornament is made from crystallized core material from my ship, the same ship that brought me to you that night. Hang it where you can see it and remember that you were never ordinary. You were exactly what you needed to be. Thank you for proving that humanity's greatest gift to the galaxy isn't our technology or our adaptability. It's our belief that everyone matters, that everyone deserves a chance, and that the true measure of a person isn't what they can do, but how they treat others. Keep spreading that message. The galaxy needs it now more than ever. Your friend always, Ethan Cole. P.S. Merry Christmas, Zara. Every year, always. Zara hung the ornament in her office window, where it caught the light from Viridian 7's twin moons and cast rainbow patterns across the walls. It became a focal point for visitors, who would ask about its origins and receive the story of the human mechanic in red who had appeared on a cold festival night to teach a young girl about her own worth. The story spread further, becoming a popular tale told across the sector, inspiring others to look beyond supernatural abilities and recognize the value in dedication, learning, and human compassion. As decades passed, Zara became an elder stateswoman of engineering, respected not just for her technical expertise, but for her philosophy that true progress required valuing all types of contributions. She watched as her early students became leaders in their own right, implementing her principles and spreading them to new generations. The blind reliance on gifted abilities that had nearly destroyed her colony became a cautionary tale, while the integration of fundamental skills with supernatural talents became the new standard. On her 50th birthday, Zara gave a speech at the sector's annual engineering conference that was broadcast across dozens of worlds. She spoke about her journey from a child without gifts to a respected leader in her field. She talked about the importance of perseverance, education, and maintaining humility regardless of natural advantages. And she told the story, as she always did, of Ethan Cole and his message of universal worth. The speech ended with words that would be quoted for generations. "We are not defined by the abilities we are born with," Zara said, her voice strong and clear despite her years. "We are defined by the effort we invest, the knowledge we build, the kindness we show, and the lives we touch. Whether you have gifts or not, whether you possess supernatural talents or rely solely on learned skills, you have value. You matter, and the world needs what only you can offer. Never forget that. Never let anyone convince you otherwise. And always remember to help others discover their own worth, just as someone once helped me discover mine." The applause that followed was thunderous, a standing ovation from beings of dozens of species, some gifted with extraordinary abilities and some without, all united in their recognition of a simple truth that a human in a red suit had traveled across space to teach. That everyone matters, that kindness transcends power, and that the real measure of civilization isn't the height of its technology or the strength of its supernatural abilities, but how it treats those who seem ordinary in a world that celebrates the extraordinary. Zara lived to see her 100th birthday, a remarkable age for her species. She spent her final years writing her memoirs, ensuring that the lessons she had learned and the story of the human who had changed her life would be preserved for future generations. The book, titled The Mechanic in Red, became a bestseller across the sector and was translated into hundreds of languages. It inspired countless individuals who felt overlooked or undervalued, giving them hope and direction. On her last Christmas Eve, surrounded by former students, colleagues, and friends. Zara sat in her home on Viridian 7 and looked out at the decorated colony she had helped transform. The ornament Ethan had given her still hung in her window, its crystal surface unmarred by time, still casting the same rainbow patterns it had produced 70 years earlier. As the celebration continued around her, Zara closed her eyes and thought about that cold festival night so long ago, when a strange craft had landed in the maintenance district and a human dressed in red had emerged to tell her she mattered. "Thank you, Ethan," she whispered to the stars beyond her window. "Thank you for showing me that being ordinary was never the problem. Thank you for teaching me that the real gift is believing in people, especially those who struggle to believe in themselves. Thank you for spreading that very human idea that everyone deserves to feel special, not for what they can do, but for who they are." I tried to pass it on. I hope I did it justice. The stars seemed to twinkle a bit brighter, as if in acknowledgement. And somewhere among those distant lights, perhaps in another colony where another child felt overlooked and undervalued, a red craft descended from the sky, carrying a human in a peculiar outfit with a big bag of tools and an even bigger message of hope. The Santa Claus Network continued its work, spreading across the galaxy, a uniquely human tradition that had become a universal reminder of shared values and common decency. Zara passed peacefully that night, surrounded by love and secure in the knowledge that her life had mattered, that she had made a difference, and that the lesson she had learned would continue to inspire long after she was gone. Her funeral was attended by thousands, and speakers from across the sector came to share how she had touched their lives and changed their perspectives. The colony declared a day of remembrance in her honor, and her former students established the Zara Foundation, dedicated to providing education and opportunities to individuals regardless of their natural abilities or supernatural gifts. The crystal ornament was placed in the colony's museum, where it became the centerpiece of an exhibit about Zara's life and the human who had inspired her. Visitors from across the galaxy came to see it, to hear the story, and to be reminded that worth comes not from exceptional abilities, but from exceptional character, effort, and compassion. The exhibit included Ethan's letters, Zara's certification, and documentation of the reactor repair that had started everything. But the most popular part was a holographic recreation of that first meeting, when a strange human in red appeared before a lonely child and told her she was exactly what her colony needed. Generations later, children on Viridian 7 and dozens of other worlds still learned about Zara and Ethan in their schools. The story became a foundational part of the sector's cultural education, a reminder that progress required valuing all types of contributions and that sometimes the most important breakthroughs came from those who approached problems without supernatural advantages. The annual Christmas celebration remained popular, a time when communities focused on giving, connection, and recognizing the inherent worth of every individual. And every year, on Christmas Eve, parents across the sector told their children about the human mechanic in red who appeared when people needed him most, who taught that everyone was special regardless of their abilities, and who believed that the greatest gift anyone could give was helping someone else discover their own value. Some claimed to have seen his red craft in the sky, appearing briefly before vanishing among the stars. Others insisted they had received mysterious help during moments of crisis, assistance from a stranger who asked nothing in return except that they remember to help others in turn. Whether Ethan Cole still traveled the galaxy or had passed his mission to others, whether the stories of his continued appearances were true or had become legend, the impact of his visit to Viridian 7 remained undeniable. He had arrived at exactly the right moment, helped exactly the right person, and planted a seed that had grown into a movement spanning dozens of worlds. His message that everyone matters, that kindness transcends power, and that the true measure of worth lies in how we treat others rather than what supernatural abilities we possess, had become a cornerstone of an entire sector's philosophy. The girl without gifts had become a legend in her own right, not because she developed supernatural abilities, but because she proved that such abilities weren't necessary for extraordinary achievement. She had saved her colony not despite her ordinariness, but because of the skills and perspective it had forced her to develop. She had changed countless lives by showing them that value came from within, from effort and dedication, and the choice to care about others. And she had spread a very human message across alien worlds, demonstrating that the best of humanity wasn't our technology or our adaptability, but our fundamental belief in the worth and dignity of every individual. The story of the mechanic in red and the girl without gifts became more than just a tale of one night's adventure. It became a symbol of hope for everyone who felt overlooked, undervalued, or insufficient in a world that celebrated exceptional abilities. It reminded people across the galaxy that there were many ways to be special, many types of gifts to offer, and that sometimes the most important contributions came from those who had to work hardest to develop their capabilities. It taught that kindness, generosity, and the willingness to help others discover their own worth were gifts that anyone could give and everyone should receive. And that was the end of the story. If you listened all the way to here, don't forget to leave feedback about what you thought of the story in the comments, whether positive or negative. Your feedback helps us improve. Also, leave your like and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this one. And I'll leave here on the screen another video that I'm sure you'll like. Big hug, and see you in the next story.